A very good evening. You're watching India Global. I'm Gaurie Dwivedi. Let's start the show with headlines this evening. First up, Bangladesh pledges to hold free and fair elections. The Election Commissioner of Bangladesh, meanwhile, targets Sheikh Hasina, says people who win by manipulating polls will not be able to survive. Remember, this comes at a time when India and Bangladesh are also set to hold talks over the Ganga Water Treaty. Top Belgian delegation meets External Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar and Defence Minister Rajnath Singh. Talks focus on semiconductors, AI and defence collaboration. Comes at a time when Jaishankar is also set to visit the UK and Ireland amidst renewed trade talks. Indian woman on death row in UAE executed. Woman was allegedly on death row for killing a child. Japan fights its latest wildfire in over 30 years. One death, thousands evacuated in the wildfire. And Oscars 2025 once again shows India's big win. Namit Malhotra's movie wins the 7th Oscar for VFX. Meanwhile, Anora bags 5 Oscars and Emilia Perez wins 2. All right, viewers, on India Global today, we start with 2 very important stories coming in from Bangladesh. Amidst growing pressure on the interim Yunus government to hold elections, Bangladesh's Chief Election Commissioner has said that the Election Commissioner's only agenda is to hold free and fair and transparent and credible elections in the country. Well, remember, it comes almost 7 months after the interim government took office. The CEC also attacked former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, saying that while someone may win in the election by manipulating the polls, they cannot survive, and went on to say that history says this, hitting out at Sheikh Hasina, who won 4 elections on the row. Meanwhile, Chief Advisor Mohammad Yunus has called for the quote-unquote meticulous preservation of records documenting alleged atrocities that were committed under the administration of Sheikh Hasina. These developments come at a time when an 11-member delegation from Bangladesh is in Kolkata to discuss the Ganga Water Treaty. It was for a 30-year term that was signed during Deve Gaura's term, and it is now up for renewal. The Ganga Water Treaty, of course, is part of the 54 waters that India and Bangladesh share, and which way and how the water distribution happens impacts both sides of the water very, very deeply, and remains to be seen how these negotiations go, because remember, they come in the backdrop of some very bitter exchanges that have taken place between India and Bangladesh over the course of the last 6 odd months. Let's get in Saurabh Gupta, who's been tracking these developments very closely for us. Saurabh, it's an important meeting, as I said, coming at a time when there have been bitter exchanges between the two sides, and there's been a bit of a lack of trust on two sides. But this is a very important negotiation, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. Not only is this an issue between Bangladesh and India, not only is it a bilateral issue, but remember, this is a tripartite issue. The state of West Bengal also has its say. And this is something that was discussed during former Prime Minister of Bangladesh, Sheikh Hasina's visit to India. And at that time, the state of West Bengal objected to not being included in the discussions, because remember, the Farakka barrage water also diverts water into the Hooghly river system. And that is crucial for the functioning of the Kolkata port, the Haldia port, and therefore there is a lot of, disagreements between within India. But again, like I said, this is also about Bangladesh and India, how much water Bangladesh gets during the lean season, how much water India gets. There are certain specified amounts if the water level falls below a certain level at the Farakka barrage. And that's why this is a very important issue. This could be a bone of contention. Remember, there is another water sharing treaty that has also not been able to, that has not been operationalized, because there are concerns over sharing of water, and that is the Teesta Water Pact. That has not taken place. So obviously this is an ongoing pact, but again, this is up for renewal in 2026, and this is going to be a sticky issue bilaterally as well. Even though India is committed to, sharing the water with Bangladesh, and because there is also the whole cruise and etc. That runs through this waterway system all the way from India, up to Dibrugarh. So all of these are issues that are likely to be discussed, and that's what a lot is at stake in these discussions.
Indeed, Saurabh, thanks much for breaking that down for us. Indeed, this is a very important negotiation, and remains to be seen whether the two sides are able to sort of move together and find some sort of an agreement on that. All right, the other big story on Bangladesh, as I said, there are several legs to the story that we are discussing. The other is the free and fair elections that Bangladesh Chief Election Commissioner has pledged to hold. Now, why it impacts, of course, is first and foremost, Bangladesh has been in a state of turmoil, and any path towards democratic normalcy is very important. But the question we ask, will Yunus cede power? Who gains from these delayed elections? It's been going on for several months now. Clamour for elections has been growing within quarters from Mohammad Yunus's administration, and it's only now that there is some voices coming in. The third important part, will Awami League be allowed to contest these elections? Otherwise, how are they free and fair? And the last part, the challenges that lie ahead for Bangladesh election to actually happen, whether it's the radical elements, the fringe groups, will they be, will they be allowed to have a complete hold, or will they be tempered down, is another aspect of these elections that remains to be seen. And it's only then we'll know whether the path towards democratic normalcy actually takes place or not. Muqtadir Rashid joins me from Bangladesh. Veena Sikri, former High Commissioner to India, of India to Bangladesh, also with me on the broadcast. Muqtadir, let me give you the first word. You're representing Bangladesh in this panel. The question one asks is not that there should be free and fair elections, as the Election Commissioner says, something that we've been saying all along. The point is, how soon will they happen, and will they really be free and fair?
The Bangladeshi people are really expecting for a free, fair election for like more than a decade. I mean, there would be last election which we saw a bit free, fair, that was in 2008, and no election since then had taken place, which is, we can't say the credible election. So Bangladesh definitely needs a credible election, which should be done under the leadership of Mr. Dr. Yunus. And the question is how it will be happen. Will be taken by all the political party will come to a conclusion, and then they will allow it to hold or not. But it should be like this. It should be. I mean, it is not the issue that how many parties is going to join the election. It is important whether the voters can franchise their opinion or franchise their vote. Free and fair manner. That's very crucial for us. And one of the biggest problem for us is whether the electoral system allow us to elect freely their own leadership. And sometimes we have seen that the elected leader has been chosen by the government or government backed. In the past, it happened. So we need to have that the voter can choose their own leader, whoever it is. It could be Nahid Islam, it could be Tariq Rahman, whoever it is. So the choice should be given to the voters. So that is what we believe in a credible election. So that should be a credible election. No matter who is only, I mean, probably many Awami League will contest, an Awami League leader will contest independently, or maybe they have their own kind of candidate, although many of them already been by this time are arrested, and it's very difficult for them to contest an election, which is going to happen, we believe, in December next. So people are really expecting a free, fair, and credible election, and that should be that must be participatory.
Okay, Veena Sikri, you want to come in there?
Yes, certainly. I do think that the elections, as the Chief Election Commissioner has said, need to be free and fair and transparent. But the most important part is that they need to be inclusive. they need to allow all the registered political parties in Bangladesh to participate in the elections. I mean, this kind of throwing a hint here and there that, oh, Awami League people are in prison so they can't take part. This is happening deliberately. We know that a lot of people have been thrown into jail on charges of murder for which there is no evidence, no FIR, nothing. So I think this is the biggest concern of the people of Bangladesh, because previously when they were saying that, say, the BNP not being allowed to take part or so-and-so not being allowed to take part, but, you know, there were international observers who were there at every election from the European Union, from the UN, from everywhere, and everybody was free to take part in the elections if they wanted. The BNP chose not to take part. Other political parties like the Jamaat-e-Islami had been debarred from elections by the court because they believe that their constitution is superior to the constitution of Bangladesh. So, you know, this is the kind of issues that were there, but these issues should be certainly taken on board, and the elections must be inclusive. This business of throwing people into jail, the business of releasing, this Ansarul Bangla team, Jashuddin Rahmani, all the terrorists, all the radicalized elements have been convicted, they are being released, and representatives of political parties are being thrown in jail and slapped with murder charges. And even the media representatives, the biggest flaw in today's situation in Bangladesh is that the media has been completely gagged. The media has been completely gagged, and even boards of media have been changed, and the media is not allowed to report. Many well-known media journalists in Bangladesh are today in jail on murder charges. So how can you have free and fair elections when the media is completely gagged and not allowed to report? That's number one. And number two, I think that it is very important to know that there is a big clamor in Bangladesh today for early, free, fair, transparent and inclusive elections. In fact, most people do not accept what some people are saying, which is that have reforms before elections. This is what Professor Muhammad Yunus has been saying. This is what I think the Jamaat-e-Islami and Hizb ut-Tahrir are saying. All the radical Islamic parties, even the newly formed so-called National Citizen Party, that too has been saying. Now, the point is that reforms can only be done by an elected parliament. This group, this interim regime is not elected. It is not there on any constitutional basis. It has no legitimacy at all. So for them to say that they will undertake reforms without having any legitimate or constitutional provision for their very existence is actually a travesty and a big slur on having free, fair and inclusive elections. So I think that this aspect has to be looked in very carefully. Okay. That reforms cannot take place unless it is an elected parliament. So I think the whole issue is that elections should be held as soon as possible.
You know, that's a very fair point. That's a very fair point you've put out, ma'am, which is
I would like,
who conducts these reforms? Yeah, go ahead. Finish your point, ma'am. Yeah,
I was just finishing my point that actually the fact that this government wants reforms for elections and the fact that they are releasing people like, convicted terrorists and radicalized elements and people who've been convicted, even the BDR ones who were convicted have today been released. It's changing the very law and order situation in Bangladesh. The situation is so poor. Everybody is saying, Aage bhalo chilo, it was better earlier. Because today there is absolutely no control, no law and order. Thanas have been burned, policemen have been killed in large numbers. When Muhammad Yunus meets people like the representatives of UN and says that we must target the atrocities committed, so-called atrocities committed by former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, I would like to know who is documenting the present atrocities. Even the Bangladesh gagged media is writing about it.
Right.
About the absolute.
Ma'am, you were just finishing your point because there's a paucity of time here. Muqtadir Rashid, I'm going to give you 30 seconds. The fact is, it's an elected government that makes reforms. How does an interim government justify that?
And this is a very good question because the politician I spoke to, even from the BNP and other party, they say, look, whatever the prescription we are getting from this interim government, it is we have to implement it. It is not the interim government, they are going to implement this. So there should be consultation with the political leadership.
Okay.
And there is a lack of confidence between the political leadership and the interim government, which unfortunately lead towards the uncertainty of the political discourse.
At the end of the day, Mr. Rashid, one can turn around and say that Mr. Yunus has a limited scope of work, which is to bring things towards democratic transition. He doesn't have the authority to build consensus over everything. Let's remember that. And
Exactly.
I think that is where the fine line needs to be drawn. But thank you so much. I'm afraid I'm out of time. And I guess that looks like the story for Bangladesh as well when it comes to elections. Let's quickly take a break. We come back with more stories on the other side. Welcome back. This is India Global. An Indian woman, Shahzadi Khan, who was facing a death sentence in the UAE, has been executed. The Foreign Ministry has informed the Delhi High Court today. 33-year-old woman from Uttar Pradesh's Banda district was facing execution in Abu Dhabi over an allegation of killing a 4-month-old child. Shahzadi Khan was executed on the 15th of February this year in accordance with the laws and regulations of the UAE, the Foreign Ministry told the court.
Shahzadi was convicted on 28th of February 2024. We have applied for the clemency on 11th of March. And after that, on 14th of February 2025, we have received a call from jail as a last wish from the Shahzadi that she is going to be executed very soon. So we got panic. We have approached External Affairs Office and Prime Minister Office with regard to the call. So we have applied on 21st of February 2024 with current legal status, whether she is going to be hanged or she is not going to be hanged, what is the process and what happened to the mercy petition. So officials have not replied anything. In the High Court, it has been officially cleared that she has been hanged. Last rites, burial, will happen on 5th of March of 2023. But we have only 2 days. They have assured that they will assist in all the manner as required.
Okay, let's get in Mohammad Ghazali to really connect the dots for us. Ghazali, what's the story here? Tell us.
See, this Shahzadi Khan from UP's Banda district somehow managed to reach UAE through an agent as per the petition filed in the Delhi High Court. In 2022, she was she was working as a caregiver. And the family for which she was hired as a caregiver had a baby which got ill. Shahzadi Khan was taking care of her and of that baby, and later when this baby was brought to the hospital on one fine day when the baby was not well, the hospital declared him or her as brought dead. The family on that particular day, as per the High Court petition which was filed by the family here in Delhi, the family of that child did give a consent that they don't want the post-mortem to be done, but months later they produced a video where Shahzadi was seen confessing that she had killed the baby, and based on that confession the trial went on. While Shahzadi and her family kept approaching the External Affairs Ministry here, the trial went on there and she was convicted and was on death row. On 15th of Feb, she was executed, but the Indian Embassy in UAE was informed about the execution on 28th of February. And when the family approached the Delhi High Court, a similar response was given by the MEA, and that's how this entire story comes to a tragic end.
All right, let's leave it there, Mohammad Ghazali, for thanks much for filling us in with that. Shifting focus now, days after a massive EU delegation visited India and set a year-end deadline for FTA talks, a high-level Belgian delegation led by Princess Astrid is in India till the 8th of March to boost trade and diplomatic ties. The delegation is accompanied by a major economic mission with 36 companies and 4 official organizations. Foreign Minister Dr. Jaishankar met with Belgium's Foreign Minister at Hyderabad House, where talks focused on semiconductors and AI, amongst other things, while Princess Astrid also met with Defence Minister Rajnath Singh to discuss defence collaboration. Meanwhile, Foreign Minister Dr. Jaishankar is also set to visit the UK and Ireland after India and the UK resume talks on the issue of FTA.
Today has the possibility of growing in a more contemporary format. We are discussing, semiconductors and AI and clean energy and research and innovation. I'm particularly pleased that we also have an opportunity to welcome Her Royal Highness Princess Astrid and the Economic Mission. To have, I think, close to 360, am I correct? Yeah. Businesses coming is something really impressive.
Okay, let's get Ghazali back with us on the broadcast to really talk to us about an important aspect of what India is trying to do, which is to stitch trade deals, which is to stitch FTAs to try and get a new trade framework in place at a time when there's so much of uncertainty with regard to the US. Ghazali, there are parallel negotiations that are happening, whether it's the UK, whether it's Belgium. Clearly, Mr. Piyush Goyal's office is now working overtime to try and ensure that we insulate ourselves from the trade uncertainty coming in from the US.
Yeah, certainly the West is wooing India, and you can see it was European Union Commission which came here. Before that, when you had the India and UK discussing the FTA, and now the Belgian Economic Commission over here. They are now Belgian Economic Commission led by the princes and more than 300 company executives, and they're not just centered or will be staying in Delhi meeting the ministers here, though they did meet External Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar, Defense Minister Mr. Rajnath Singh. But the company officials and the entire delegation is visiting multiple states and cities to strike or to observe the kind of work Belgian companies are doing, and also to establish new companies and sign and do much more and announce much more in this regard to boost their trade ties with India.
All right, we leave it there, Ghazali. Shifting focus now to Pakistan, which is actually buying a stake in the BRICS-backed New Development Bank in a move that could help Islamabad diversify its credit options and reduce its dependence on the World Bank and the IMF. Remember, it's been over 14 rounds of funding that Pakistan has taken from these development organizations to just remain afloat. What it's trying to do, the plan will ensure that the country makes a $582 million investment to acquire a little over 1% in NDB, which aims to mobilize resources for infra and sustainable development projects in emerging economies. All right, let's get in Batul Rajput, who's joining me live from Lahore, to put more details into this story. Batul, what are you hearing? And more importantly, why does the government want to spend that kind of money right now over this investment?
Thank you so much. Primarily, I believe, and I spoke to some very important people in financial sector, and they say that the authorities in Pakistan, they want to do it because they are literally disturbed by the political decisions within the Bretton Woods financial system, and they urge to have another opportunity in this kind of financial system to have new rollovers and other kind of financial support. So basically, the opportunity is to have more portion as investment, like as you mentioned, the details of 1.1% share in a new development bank. It's been 1 year that Pakistan was trying to be part of this bank, but with the support of Russia, Pakistan could get this opportunity. And in future, Pakistan is able to have in the form of loans with alternative options, with the support of this new financial system, because in the past, whether it's World Bank, it's Asian Development Bank or IMF, Pakistan has faced some political decisions. The financial decisions, those were driven by the political side or political inclination of these institutions. That's why I believe that they're comparatively excited and happy not to be part of the system.
All right.
And as you mentioned, that this is going to be a big share, but
yes,
this is the share that Pakistan can afford comfortably.
All right, leave it there, Batul. Thanks much for that update. On that note, a quick break, more news on the other side. This is India Global. We now turn our attention to the latest in the Ukraine-Russia war. Well, days after a fiery clash in the Oval Office upended the US-Ukraine ties, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer has said that West is at a crossroads in history and now is the time to act. As Europe moves to take control of negotiations over the war away from the US and present a united front where a UK-French-led peace plan could be created and offered and presented to the US. Well, despite the meltdown between Washington and Kiev, Zelensky said he believed he could salvage his relationship with Donald Trump after Friday's shouting match. But that talks would have to take place behind closed doors. This report explains the details of what that plan may look like.
A war raging for 3 years, a divided West, and now a high-stakes summit that could decide Ukraine's future.
Through my discussions over recent days, we've agreed that the UK, France and others will work with Ukraine on a plan to stop the fighting.
It's now of utmost importance to step up the defence investment for a prolonged period of time.
UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer has announced a 4-point plan, a blueprint to end the war and protect Ukraine from future Russian attacks. Starmer has announced Coalition of the Willing, a core group of nations led by the UK and France, pledging military aid, economic pressure on Russia, and guarantees for Ukraine's security. The US isn't part of this coalition yet, but Europe wants Washington on board. This summit follows a fierce showdown between Zelensky and Trump at the White House, exposing deep cracks over Ukraine. UK PM Keir Starmer has said that first the UK must keep military aid flowing and increase pressure on Russia. Second, any peace deal must guarantee Ukraine's sovereignty, with Kiev directly at the table. Third, Starmer wants Ukraine's defenses strengthened to prevent future invasions. And fourth, he called for a coalition of the willing, countries that will guarantee the peace deal and defend Ukraine afterwards.
The purpose of today's meeting was to unite our partners around this effort, to strengthen Ukraine and to support a just and enduring peace for the good of all of us.
The UK is backing its promise with £1.6 billion to buy over 5,000 air defence missiles, on top of a £2.2 billion loan funded by profits from frozen Russian assets. Starmer warned against any weak deal that Russia can easily break, saying Europe must lead, but US support is essential. Leaders from France, Germany, Poland, Sweden, Turkey and Canada, alongside the EU chief and NATO head, attended the summit. EU chief Ursula von der Leyen warned that Europe urgently needs to rearm and loosen budget rules to fund defence. The big question: can Starmer's coalition unite Europe, bring Trump on side and secure peace without handing victory to Moscow? With Rhythm Arcadia, Bureau Report, NDTV World.
Okay, so what is really the plan that Europe has when it comes to addressing, ending the entire conflict? Is the questions, in fact, we pose today. One is that will Europe actually deter Russia without US support? Remember, this was a question that Trump asked Starmer last week, that what are you going to do against Russia? And that question is still valid with no adequate answers. The second key question that I pose is that does Europe have defense capabilities to actually meet Kiev's needs? Remember, it asked for $250 billion from Keir Starmer and it got $2.5 billion. All of it was not defense, some of it was also reconstructive aid for reconstruction. The third question that I'm putting tonight is, can Europe actually trust Trump? Which way is this going to go is going to depend on the trust factor between the two allies, and it seems that it's going through a bit of a crisis. Okay, let's get in Nicholas Sturgeon joining me from London, and Sophie Fullerton, who's Professor of Politics at the Fordham University as well. Sophie, let me give you the first word here. We put out those questions, which I think really sets the agenda for why we are having this conversation. The fact is, Europe may show its outrage, it may show its solidarity, but it doesn't have much to show when it comes to numbers on the board as to how it wants to defend Ukraine.
So the biggest issue here is if Russia wins this in relation to the invasion of Ukraine, we're going to see Russia at the rest of Europe's door. So this is the big fear that Europe has at this point. So they don't really have a choice at this point than to step up and take charge where the US is choosing to lead from behind. In relation to the question as to whether Europe can trust the US has been one of their longest allies, but it's continued to prove these past few weeks that it's going to move towards the helm of Russia and put our allies to the side. So from what I'm seeing, they want to continue to trust the U.S., but it's yet to be seen as to whether that trust can be had as Trump and his administration continues to push more towards Russian policy interests.
All right. Let me get Nicholas as well on the broadcast. Nicholas, how do you feel about the UK-France solidarity? You have 17 other partners who were there together with the Ukraine. But what they're trying to make up, whether it comes to solidarity, they're losing out in terms of actual numbers. And I think that's really the story, isn't it?
Well, let's start by saying that I think the answer to your question about whether Europe can trust the US is it has to trust the US, because Europe can't go it alone, whatever going it means. Because I'm finding a lot of confusion at the moment as to whether we're looking for a peace, a solution, an end to the war, or whether we're bunching together to arm Ukraine even more. And I think even those who took part in yesterday's important meeting didn't really know what they were doing, didn't really know where they were heading. Because on the one hand, Mr. Trump talks a lot about peace, but appears only to be dealing with one side. That's to say, he's shown his antagonism towards Kiev, towards Ukraine, but he has been talking to the Russian leader. Europe is friendly towards Kiev and backing President Zelensky, as yesterday's meeting showed, but it doesn't yet seem to be talking to Russia. So I'm very confused. Was this a bunch yesterday of those supporting Ukraine in this conflict, or were they genuinely heading for peace? You talk about a 4-point peace plan, but where is the plan? Because you can't have a peace plan unless you're talking to both sides, and I've seen no evidence that the European group, let's call them NATO without the United States, because that's what was meeting yesterday.
Yeah, that's what they are, yes.
Without the United States, but they're not talking to Russia. So it's a very, very confusing situation, I think.
Indeed. Sophie, how do we respond to what Nicholas just said? And it's a very valid point that Europe is trying to make up for the fact that A, there's no US in it, B, that they are not having any lines of communication with Russia. How do you resolve a conflict without speaking to one of the two parties?
I agree in the sense that Europe needs the US, especially there's been conversation about boots on the ground. Well, you can't do that without US backing. I'll go back to what I said previously as to whether the US is willing to do that. It's yet to be seen. This administration is very wiggy in relation to how they go about their foreign policy. And we've seen the Trump administration continue to move more towards a pro-Russia policy. The Kremlin and Putin are not going to be okay with any types of boots on the ground, especially if it's being backed by the US. So again, it's to be seen as to whether this can be a coalition that also includes the US. But as I've said previously, whether the US is going to be able to come in and be a leader within this, Europe has no other choice but to move forward with or without the US. What I also want to say, which I find really interesting.
Sophie, I want to interrupt you here there just to sort of, put one more thing in perspective, which is that the US under Trump administration is very clear that they will not have any boots on ground. And Mr. Starmer clarified that they will have boots on ground only when the US is on board. So what are we really trying to achieve here by not moving forward?
So it's this push and pull that we're seeing, right? Starmer has also said that we need to have the U.S. at the table when it comes to these types of negotiations, and that we're willing to and continuing to wanting to work with the U.S. to get a specific type of deal, to see some type of peace. What I was going to say too, which I think is really interesting here, is you're starting to see other countries come to the table that haven't had a seat. As the U.S. continues to pull more from behind, we're starting to see countries like Turkey, for example, that are at this meeting when the U.S. isn't. And what does that mean for foreign policy relations within Europe, and who's going to be the one really leading these types of coalitions?
Okay. All right. I'm afraid there's some breaking news that's coming in, and I want to address that. Viewers, that is coming in from Germany right now. It looks like there is a car that has Looks like there's a car that has in fact rammed into a crowd full of people in Germany, and one person has in fact lost his life. Let's play out those visuals full frame for our viewers to see what's happening. That's the update that I have right now, which is that a black car drove into crowds and there's armed presence right now on scene. Remains to be seen if anybody has taken up responsibility for this. So far, it hasn't been the case. If at all, any group, any individual, any lone wolf attack or any of that sort has happened where people or organization or individual has taken responsibility for this attack so far. I believe we're still awaiting more details. On your screens right now are some of those live visuals coming in of there looks like a busy, bustling street in the afternoon in Germany, where a black car rammed into a crowd full of people, a crowded market, crowded area, and one person has been confirmed dead so far. On your screens are some of those are deferred visuals also, viewers. Let's point that out. And I see a lot of policemen and security guards on screen. As I said, motive is unclear. Who has taken responsibility is also unclear so far. And also if the situation is under control or not, we are going to await more clarity, more details on the same. Okay, let's get in Arjun to just give us a sense of what's the latest coming in there. Arjun, any updates you can share with us?
Gaurie, this incident has reportedly taken place in Germany's Mannheim around an hour ago, where a black SUV reportedly drove at a high speed into people. What we are gathering right now, as per reports from the ground, is several people, pedestrians, in fact, were knocked down. And this happened in the main city shopping street area of Mannheim, of around the Mannheimer Morgen. This happened at the city center near the Mannheimer Morgen. Now, the vehicle was reportedly traveling from the centrally located Paradeplatz Square towards the city's landmark water tower, the Mannheim 24 water tower. Local media is reporting this, and they've also added that several people, let me underline it here, several people have reportedly been severely injured. Meanwhile, other German news websites are also reporting that the driver, in fact, the accused, has been arrested by German police authorities. We'll keep you getting the latest on this story, Gaurie.
Any reason that has been any organization has accepted responsibility? Has the police confirmed it as a terror attack?
Not as of now. They have not confirmed this as an alleged terror attack or a terror attack as of now, but it's crucial to remember that a similar incident took place right before the Munich Security Conference. Instead, one day before the Munich Security Conference, less than 2 kilometers away from the venue. So we'll just have to wait and watch what the authorities come up with, Gaurie.
Okay, let's leave it there. That was Arjun just giving us an update on what may or may not be a terror attack. It could be, as I said, a lone wolf acting alone, or it could be an organization. Motive remains unclear. Organization is unknown. And we are awaiting more details of the security situation. Okay, on that note, a quick break. More news on the other side. Stay with us. The US is reportedly hitting pause on all cyber ops against Russia. Multiple reports say that Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has ordered a halt to offensive actions as part of a broader review of US strategy towards Moscow. It's unclear how long the pause will last or how far it extends. The move comes as President Trump pushes for negotiations to end the war in Ukraine and just days after he berated his Ukrainian counterpart Zelensky in a stormy White House meeting. Western nations have accused the Kremlin of orchestrating a string of incidents aimed at weakening support for Ukraine. Trump, meanwhile, has cast himself as a mediator between Putin and Zelensky, sidelining Kiev and Europe while pursuing rapprochement with Putin. More on Trump. His tariffs on Canada and Mexico will go into effect on Tuesday. That's the 4th of March as originally planned. But he would determine whether to stick with the original 25% level or bring it down. That's what the update has come from the Commerce Secretary. The 30-day pause on duties for Canada and Mexico, which President Trump tied to illegal border crossings and the flow of fentanyl into the U.S., is set to expire on the 4th of March. Comments by Latinx were the first indication from the Trump administration that it may not impose the full threatened 25% tariffs on all goods from Mexico and non-energy imports from Canada. He said the two countries have done a reasonable job securing their borders with the U.S., though the deadly drug fentanyl continues to flow freely into the country. All right, let's get an update from Sophie on this. Sophie, it's interesting that a month has passed and it now seems, or at least that's the update coming in, that the full onslaught of the tariff threat may not be unleashed in one go.
Yeah, so with Trump relating to any of his foreign policy, it's really yet to be seen at the last minute what he's going to do. So what he says today can change tomorrow. What I will say, this tariff situation, particularly with our close allies and neighbors, are not popular with the American people, particularly when it comes to what Trump campaigned on in relation to lowering prices. If you remember, even the mottos and logos that we saw throughout his campaign, he was all about quote unquote lowering egg prices, which got out of control. So this idea and concern that possibly these tariffs could lead to higher prices within the US, as a lot of Americans are struggling, will not be popular. So it's yet to be seen as to whether these tariffs will completely go into effect, like you said, the 25%. I would assume and suggest, or I would assume that it would be less than what is being propositioned right now.
Okay, so very quickly, does this uncertainty mean that there could be more back and forth, or do you think it could be a graded approach by Trump administration?
It's yet to be seen. I would say that these tariff negotiations have truly hurt the allyship that was Canada-US and Mexico and US. So it's going to continue to hurt, I wouldn't say sever the relations when it comes to US and its neighbors. Canada has, for example, been trying to do anything to alleviate these impending tariffs. So, for example, even though only 1% of fentanyl is going across the border from Canada, Canada has beefed up its security and drug measuring to make sure that any type of fentanyl that may get into the US is stopped. So they are really trying to work within Canada and with the US officials to make sure that what Trump wants to make sure these tariffs don't come through, he gets essentially.
Okay, let's leave it there, Sophie. In fact, moving on to China, where the top political meeting of the year kicks off with President Xi, in fact, holding talks and looking to reinforce confidence in the economy. She is likely to unveil a stimulus plan this week as Beijing faces growing pressure from the new US tariffs imposed by President Trump. Optimism had been building ahead of the National People's Congress, fueled by AI breakthroughs and Xi's recent outreach to private sector leaders like Alibaba's Jack Ma. But that really is now facing a reality check, with Trump's latest 10% tariff taking effect just a day before the premier lays out China's economic roadmap. Thousands of delegates, including top officials from across China, will gather in Beijing on Wednesday. They are expected to set a 5% growth target and approve the country's biggest budget deficit in 3 decades, injecting trillions into the economy that's struggling with deflation, a housing slump and trade tensions. With the US-China economic standoff escalating, Beijing is now shifting focus inward, vowing to boost domestic demand over exports. Turning our attention to Canada, where the race to replace Justin Trudeau is heating up, with candidates now battling for the top spot in Canada's ruling Liberal Party. In the country's next Prime Minister. Liberal Party, in fact, is now, its members will choose their new leader on the 9th of March, just months before a crucial election. Frontrunner Mark Carney, a former central banker, is widely expected to win, or at least that's what it looks like. Positioning himself as a centrist, Carney is working to set himself apart from Trudeau while energizing the party. A new mainstream research poll shows Carney leading former Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland by a comfortable 43% to 31%. If those numbers do hold, he should soon, or he could be, the next Prime Minister of Canada. Britain's privacy watchdog is cracking down on how social media giants handle children's data. The Information Commissioner's Office has launched investigations into TikTok, Reddit and image-sharing site Ignore over their privacy practices. Regulators are looking into how TikTok's algorithm collects and uses data from the UK teens to recommend content. Meanwhile, Reddit and Ignore face scrutiny over their handling of children's personal information and age verification measures. This isn't TikTok's first run-in with the ICO. In 2023, the platform was fined £12.7 million for failing to protect children's privacy. These new investigations are part of a broader push to hold social media platforms accountable for safeguarding young users. All right, before we wrap up, we've got to talk about the glamorous Oscars this year. It was a night of historical firsts, but what stood out was the lack of politics. There were very few political references this time around, especially the upheaval across the globe over the fiery Oval Office spat. But in a veiled reference, though, you had Adam Sandler make a surprise appearance at the 97th Academy Awards in his signature style, which was a hoodie and basketball shorts, where the host, "You're dressed well, Adam," hinting at the Trump-Zelensky interaction. Meanwhile, Kill Bill star Daryl Hannah took to the stage and started out her segment by saying Slava Ukraini, meaning glory to Ukraine. Zoe Saldana paid tribute to her immigrant roots. The most political moment arrived when the award for Best Documentary went to No Other Land, which explores Israel's demolition of Palestinian homes in the southern Western Bank. But that is a wrap. Thanks so much for watching this edition of India Global.